Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not really a good time to be the South African government. It seems that everyone's turning on them, including their allies. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But before we do, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It really does help. And if you want to support the work that I do, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. So let's get on to some minor stories and then let's get on to the major story. The first one is, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a lady who became rather internet famous on a Fly Saf Air airline, where she basically accused another colored lady on the plane of basically being not really as good as she was because of reasons. And you may recall, this was the famous "I'm an ANC bitch" case that became so should we say, infamous online, with many individuals saying, yep, this just shows you exactly how the ANC and their cadres generally tend to treat the public. Now, it turned out subsequently that she was actually an ANC bitch, because according to news, she basically was employed at SABC, so she was a journalist. Really daily reminder that you don't hate journalists enough. Anyway, it turned out that she got fired from her job because of bringing the SABC into disrepute. Well, anyway, she's had an interview now and she's come out and basically said, well, I'm not racist because, and you got to hear it, she says, our constitution can't identify someone like her as being racist. According to her, the lady who she was talking down to, the colored lady, apparently she and many others, such as Indians and so forth, were all deemed to be less favored by the apartheid regime. And so the Constitution doesn't, according to her, doesn't classify them as being in the same preference group, the same in-group. They were all subjected to, according to her, the Segregation Act and forms of colonialism, and that in itself meant that they were all previously disadvantaged. So, in her words, Indians, colored, and Chinese, and black people all fall into the same group, ergo, can't be racist to them. And so if you don't recall the thing she said, she basically said, you're colored from Michelin's plane, all these gold rings, but no degrees. Right now, when we land, I'm going to take an Uber home. You don't even have a license. You don't even have a car. Yep. So she claims that her comments, which at the time were apparently due to aggression for not being served alcohol, because apparently she wanted to get drunk and she was already intoxicated. She claimed she wasn't drunk. She was actually perfectly sober, which isn't the flex that you think it is. You're not really helping your case. In fact, you're actually making yourself seem worse. So according to her, she was sober as a judge. And yes, whilst the Human Rights Commission took the case seriously, she said she can't really be racist because you gotta love it. She's got colored friends. He says, we've all heard that one, right? She's got colored friends, and she was very upset, and you could only really accuse her of being classist, she says. Yep, that's right. And I'm reminded yet again, like, in this country and in many others, in the United States and in Britain and in all sorts of other countries, like, only white people can be racist. Even when there's like utmost displays of racism by anyone else that's not white, it's not true racism. I love this idea that the Constitution protects this individual from racism, because does the Constitution specifically say only white people can be racist? Let me know in the comment section below, but apparently this is the news. Right, next on to the next news, and that's our expelled ambassador. So apparently the expelled ambassador was given 72 hours to leave the country. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already seen it, here's the letter from Marco Rubio, who basically says, can you just get out of the country? You're no longer welcome here. And they basically told him to leave. And this became interesting because, you see, according to the news, now I don't know if I trust this, but he had actually been having some positive development. He was making some inroads to getting a important key strategic meeting in the United States, and then he said the stupid junk that he said, and it basically set them back 2 steps back to square one. And you know, this reminds me of so many instances where South Africa generally tends to kind of move forward and it just keeps making the same mistakes. And for me personally, this entire debacle with our ambassador is just showing up exactly who South Africa are. They keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And the mistakes, whilst they're claiming that they're accidental, are not accidental. They're almost deliberate, because that's the ANC's ideology. They want to side with, the Islamists. They want to side with the BRICS nations. They want to be controversial, and they want to side with all the Marxists. But at the same time, the Marxists don't pay the paychecks. And so they want to ideologically align with those people, but economically align with, the people that pay the paychecks. And this is America. And it's not working too well for them, because everybody's looking at it and calling it bullshit. Anyway, Lamola said that he encouraged the United States to raise their concerns with him directly and not to engage in megaphone or Twitter diplomacy. And yeah, there's going to be loads of people that say, don't refer to his Twitter, it's called X, but those were his exact words, they're not mine. He said that you should not engage in Twitter diplomacy. Now, this all became really interesting because the ANC actually has had to concede that the ambassador, and I quote, scored an own goal, and that the things that he said were highly problematic, that he crossed the line, and that actually they were unable to defend him. And it became interesting because they said you can't go to your host country and criticize him in the manner that he did, using the language that he did. They said that he should know that because this was all part of their diplomatic training. And according to the ANC themselves, actually, if this had been done in South Africa, where an American ambassador come in here and openly criticized a sitting head of state, Ramaphosa in this instance, yeah, they would have kicked him out of the country too, because it's not the state human thing to do. But you see, the ambassador doesn't really give a flying rat's ass, because he's just another Islamist seeking to have political point scoring against the American machine. And he just wants to call everything racist that doesn't agree with him, and, free Palestine. I don't know, some other rubbish. You guys know what this is like. But the problem is that this is the ANC putting these complete jackasses in charge of things. And it's not got better. In many respects, we all thought things would improve with the introduction of the GNU. And I hate to say it hasn't actually got better. And that's, to a large degree, really problematic. Now, the DA will say the reason it hasn't got better is because the DA basically keeps getting overplayed by the ANC. And they keep losing all these strategic battles. In which case, they're going to ask why they're there in the first place, because they're not actually bringing the benefit to the country that we all thought they would. Everybody thought, and I must admit that I also said it when the GNU was formed and everybody started to have this new Ramaphoria version 2 and this new GNU Euphoria, that I was cautious. And this is why I was cautious, because there hasn't really led to the improvements that everybody thought that it would. The ANC is still very much acting like it's a majority party. And the first time we're actually seeing forms of trouble is actually now in terms of the budget. And the current news is basically the EFF is having a discussion with the ANC to pass a budget, and we don't know what concessions are going to be given as part of that negotiations. This may actually involve the EFF joining the GNU, which the DA said if they did, they wouldn't be in the GNU and they'd leave. But let us not forget that the whole point of forming the GNU in the first place was to keep out the EFF and the MK party, the so-called Doomsday Coalition. And now they're coming in through the back door. Anyway, none of it makes sense. Like, this power play by the DA just doesn't make sense. It hasn't worked. And to a large degree, it's actually shown the DA up as a party who, in my personal opinion, just doesn't do very well in the national government. Yeah, okay, there's some standout players here and there. Obviously, Home Affairs very well run. And, Leon Schreiber has done a great job there. And Dean McPherson has done a very good job in his department. But outside of that, can we really say that the Minister of Basic Education is doing a stellar job? Bellabel, anyone? John is Agricultural Minister. I mean, that's just, by all the sources I have, it's just a disaster. Needless to say, Ramon Kabinet is still in office. Like, he was asked to resign and he's still there. He's a chief of staff earning 1 point something million a year, but he doesn't actually do anything, and the guy refuses to resign. Yes, okay, I know Ramon personally, but I'm also sitting here this many months down the line. You could say, okay, well, principled position. Yeah, that only goes so far, because we're now sitting there going, the guy's still earning a paycheck and he's not actually doing any work, and the DA is doing nothing about it. Had this been an ANC member state, the DA would have shredded the ANC a new one. But apparently it's okay when they do it. Anyway, you see, this becomes a massive problem, though, with the entire ANC individuals, because as this article even draws reference to, and I love to draw reference to our health minister, Mr. Moron, because his approach to the NHI actually tells you everything you need to know about the ANC. And this individual thinks that the whole NHI debacle is just a war. This actually comes on news that yet again more hospitals are being deemed to basically be in violation of human rights and being places you just don't want to go. They are rat-infested hellholes. But the Minister of Health says that NHR is going to fix this, even though it won't. We've got no money for NHR. Nobody knows how we're going to fund it. There are alternatives that are being put on the table. And he's like, no, we're at war for the NHR. We need to help all the whoever, there's some boogeyman's in his head. And he says the only individuals who are really pushing against it are the white monopoly capitalists who just want to profiteer on the back of the poor, innocent, downtrodden individuals. And you just have to laugh your head off and say, this guy is just cooked in the head. You see, he's so cooked in the head with his ideological battle that he's not prepared to discuss alternatives. And that's the ANC. That's the ANC through and through. And this is actually what we're seeing right now. We thought that by going into partnership with the DA, that maybe they would try, bring a degree of rationality. But we're still seeing comments such as when Moron told a DA MP that, and I quote, "You're going crazy, my brother, but like a brother, let me give you free advice or counsel. You need to consult a psychologist because the NHR is here now and it's not going anywhere." That's how these people talk. He says that basically progressive activists operating at grassroots have added their voices to the search for practical solutions to the standoff. Progressive activists. Okay, so the NHR now is not the will of the people, it's the will of progressive activists? So in other words, Kusatu and the rest of the ANC morons, because it's a great big fund that they can pillage. And according to him, he just sits there invoking conspiracy theories the whole time about, stakeholders just being, capitalists trying to exploit people. And he thinks this is all just a big war and a fight. It's not. Country doesn't have the money. And in the same process, there are practical solutions that could be adopted right now and is leading to a decrease in the quality of life for all those who are going to these facilities, and the facilities are condemned. That's the argument. This guy's too stupid to see it. And this is what we're seeing again and again and again with the ANC. And we all thought the DA would bring some level of decorum. They'd bring some rationality. It just hasn't happened. To be frank, GNU, in my opinion, has just been a disaster. Right, let's get on to the main news story. And that actually now comes down to the whole expropriation without compensation and the whole Trump debacle, because I am assured, whenever I hear these comments, the ambassador got kicked out of the United States, and you get the Afro-nationalist who's in the comment section that says, yeah, kick out all the white people from the country, and let's kick out the American ambassador because, reasons. And I'm reminded that America still hasn't appointed an ambassador because they don't give a flying monkeys about us. And everybody's like, don't worry, we'll trade with China and Russia, even though the trade deficits to those countries who I've highlighted in numerous videos don't go that way. But it's almost impossible to argue with the 30%er. It's just impossible. But what you can't argue with is the people that they class as allies. Because according to the foreign minister, the Russian foreign minister, Ramaphosa is breaking human rights by expropriating white people's land with that conversation. And he's actually saying that South Africa's treatment of minorities is not very good. And that minorities in Russia is actually treated as a big issue because they have a high degree of federalism where minorities basically get to self-govern, and they've had to be a very long time trying to figure this out. And what he's seeing in South Africa is disappointing because we're not doing the same. So yes, even the Russians, our allies, are criticizing the ANC. So now who are you going to turn to? Is this AfriForum's fault as well? At some point in time, you have to sit there and go, maybe, just maybe, you're the one at fault. Everybody else notices it. And no matter how much you ignore it, you're still the one at fault. And there's only so many times you can just say, everyone else is racist. You're alienating your own allies. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the current state of the ANC. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. As per usual, it was all my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Until tomorrow, bye.